So good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Here we are again, talking country with Brad and Chancey, sitting across the table from my good friend Chancey. How was your week, bud?
Man, it was good. Good morning, Brad. Good morning, everyone. No, it was a good week, man. It was a good dry week. Good day to be out and about. Good week to be getting some stuff done out in the fields and the pasture. I was in Liberty Hill early part of this week and driving back through, coming home. I mean, if there was a farmer, he was in the field. He was getting after it planting-wise, so...
He was, and speaking of that, me and Chancey were getting after it this morning, along with our good friend Matt Goodson, helping a good friend of ours pick up a bunch of feed that spilled off the back of his truck in the middle of the highway this morning. So nothing like shoveling 2,000 pounds of feed up off the middle of the highway to get your blood flowing in the morning.
Well, it's a good thing we had some coffee right before the game.
We did. We had a little coffee to wake us up this morning, and so now our blood's flowing. We're feeling good. We're ready for springtime, man, and it's here.
It's here, man. I'm telling you. I noticed this week, too, Eastern phoebes are really getting after it. They're starting to look for places to build nests. They're starting to call. Carolina wrens are calling. Redbirds have been, calling and starting to fly into your windows right now or in your mirrors. And just, I think on Tuesday I saw, I'm not saying they haven't been here, but I haven't seen on my place yet, was a whole bunch of giant flock of robins came through. And, they were getting after all the yopon and the possum haw, deciduous hollyberries, just in the daylights out of them. So they're usually a sure sign of spring.
And likewise, I was just showing Chancey, we got our first shipment of plants in here at the store last week, as I told you.
Yeah.
And for some reason, these little sparrows that we have that hang out inside the feed drive-through and pick up all the feed off the floor so graciously for us and poop all over everything out there, sure do like to eat pepper plants as well. I mean, they have literally stripped every leaf off of the pepper plants.
Yeah, and I didn't know that, but what it is those, Eurasia or the house sparrows, the one that's getting town, the ones that are exotic, introduced that just are a nuisance, actually. But I had no idea they'd eat pepper plants, but they sure did. They didn't mess with anything else.
Nothing else. They didn't touch the tomatoes. They didn't touch the any of the flower plants, really.
Yeah.
But Lord have mercy, they grazed the heck out of some pepper plants.
They sure did.
Yeah, and you would think, like peppers, aren't they naturally produce heat due to keep insects and different things off of them? Like that's a natural defense system that they have.
In some.
Apparently not the leaves. Yeah, there's very little defense
not
there.
Not to a house sparrow, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, tell you, they took after that.
Yes, they did. They might be, I don't know, KIA.
Yeah, the way they're looking. Yes, so don't come this week if you want to buy any pepper plants. You might give them a couple weeks to shake back up a little bit.
Yeah.
And likewise, the farmers are out rolling. Corn's going in the ground. The soil temperature, usually you got to wait for the soil temperature to hit about 50 degrees. And last week down here in Central Texas, it was in the upper 40s. So we're getting close to that. But deadgum, if there's not a 27-degree weather coming again this coming weekend on top of, what is it today, 82, 83 degrees probably?
Yeah, hopefully we get some rain. I know the farmers don't want it, but I tell you, we need some moisture, But yeah, it's crazy weather, but people are starting to think garden. I mean, the plants are telling us right now. I mean, in the last week, if you've been paying attention to your trees, the American elm and the winged elm is really starting to flower right now, put on its seed. And then, I mean, just yesterday I noticed, the Mexican plum and the thicket plum, and then also they're starting to, you can see a tint of white to them. They're starting to get ready to bloom, and also redbud. I saw some little hints of purple in the woods, this week. So next week it'll be real pretty, and you know how it is in the springtime. I mean, it just can. 1 week can make all the difference. It goes from brown to green real fast.
It does, and if you think about it, the Earth is revolving around the sun at a speed of 66,660 miles per hour. So that's moving. That gives you a very small window of time in the grand scheme of things for spring to last to get your stuff done. So we ain't drifting through space slow here, people. You better get out there, get your plants bought, and get them in the ground because we're moving.
Yeah.
So springtime is here. The first day of spring is coming March the
20th, I believe. It's always on the equinox. The 20th, I believe, this year. It changes some years depending, but always around that time frame.
Yes, and so it's a good time of the year to start thinking about plant flowers that you might like to plant. And one of the bigger advantages to having a nice flower bed outside your house or these potted flowers around your place is to watch the different things that these flowers attract, like bees and butterflies, hummingbirds.
Yes.
All kinds of neat things to just sit on your porch and just watch.
Yeah, and Brett, that's what I was thinking. because right now we're wanting to be outside too. It's springtime. It's it's starting to warm up. You're going to get some nice days. It smells good, and that's when people are out. Not only the farmers working, but the people that are in their yards that don't farm. They're getting in the garden, or they're doing landscaping, or they're going to nurseries and thinking about what kind of landscape plants can I buy. A lot of them are just thinking about colors, but you can also buy specific plants that attract specific animals.
And so there was a lot of bad things about COVID quarantine and all that. But boy, that was a time frame that really put people back in touch with gardening and yard work and producing things and growing things. It really there's a whole new generation of people that due to those few months of sitting at home that had picked back up on these things that have long been forgotten.
Yeah,
and lost.
And if there was one good thing that came out of all that nonsense for 2 years, that was definitely one of them.
Yes.
People were buying chickens and, getting in and trying to do raised beds, and that's a good thing. We need to be, in my opinion, as self-reliant and self-sustaining as we possibly can. So that's a great thing.
And, as fast as we're covering farmland up with concrete and stuff and all that,
and solar panels.
There's going to come a time in the near future where you're going to be paying a lot more for food. It's already happening.
Oh, yeah.
Wheat, I know there's a war going on in Ukraine, but wheat hit an all-time high, I think, this week. $12 and something a bushel. All-time high.
Fuel's gone up 3 times in 3 days, I think.
Yes, and so if there's ever been a time where you better start figuring out, hey, I'm going to start producing some of this stuff myself, better now than late, because times are changing in a big hurry.
It really is, and not only that, I think, with just the fuel prices going up, I think freight is about to skyrocket. The big trucks that are going up and down the road, they got to buy diesel too, so freight's going to skyrocket. That means food prices are going to go up, so growing your own food is a good idea. It really is. It's something that's not only a good idea, it's also fun and enjoyable.
It is very enjoyable.
And also, if you can attract certain critters to your plant or to your property, then that's just icing on the cake.
It is. It's very fun to watch. We have a fifth wheel camper at our house. You talk about these different plants and things to attract the bees and different things. Well, apparently a fifth wheel camper will attract bees too, because we've had a beehive up in the neck of that camper for about the last 2 years that has basically prevented us from using that thing because they get up inside the plastic of the neck of that thing.
You don't want to be the one that hooks it up.
No. And when you go camping in the summer. When are bees flying around? In the summer, So those suckers, they have been solid in there. So finally this winter we pulled all that plastic off, and it was unbelievable the hive that was up inside of there that these bees had created. Because we brought people out to look at relocating these bees several times, and they all said, Brad, there's nothing we can do about it. They're too sealed up inside there, that we can't even get to them to get them out. And so you'd spray some 7 dust and it would, knock that hive out. Well, then I guess they sense that honey and stuff maybe perhaps or something, because a new hive would come right back in and take its place.
Oh, baby.
Yeah, and so finally this year we got that taken care of. And so we might be ready to go camping now, Chancey.
Well, good.
We leave the bees at home, buddy.
That's what I want to do this weekend or this spring break is go camping and just do some kayaking and some fishing and unwind. That'll be a good – my daughter's 6 and she loves to camp. So the whole tent and everything. That'll be a good week. Hopefully it won't rain too much during that week.
Yeah, hopefully it won't. Hopefully it will.
yeah, exactly. We always, guess seems like, we can never be pleased, right? It's either not enough or too little.
Yes, and they say there's a area of high pressure, or this drought situation that's been over the West Coast is shifting our way for this year. And we typically have a drought every 10 years or so, and it's been 11 since our last one. So we're kind of overdue.
We may be in store for pretty interesting times this year.
Do you know much about the moon phases? There was a guy come in the feed store yesterday, and he said it's not going to rain because of the crescent of the moon was facing like a bowl.
Yeah.
And he said the old timers said that the moon was going to catch the rain. And when the moon was sitting like it was,
sure, like a cup. I've heard that, yeah.
And that it wasn't going to rain because the old timers always said that if I don't even know what phase of the moon that is or what you call it, but he said that if the moon is shaped like a cup, that catches the old timers said that catches the rain, and it wasn't going to rain this week.
Really? So. Well, I think a lot of that comes from the Farmer's Almanac and quote unquote science. That I think some people call it pseudoscience, but I think there's a lot to it. I think there may be some stuff as far as the the lunar and the solar and all that different that do affect things.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it than me and you know.
Yeah, way more. But yeah, I mean the moon phases. No, I don't know a whole lot. I know like when it's growing, they call it like a waxing moon, and when it's decreasing, they call it a waning moon. But the moon phase and just going out there and looking at it every night in a different spot is to me mind blowing enough. So as far as the
without
way that
getting in anything else,
as far as the way it affects things, I'm sure that it does. But lunar phase definitely has some effect, and probably has some truth to that. I mean, I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, we'll see this week.
We'll see.
Yeah. We were supposed to have anywhere from a 30 to 60% chance of rain here the next couple of days. So we'll see if the old timers are right on or if Channel 6 or Channel 10 was right. One of them said 20, one said 60. So we'll see who's right. Yeah. But anyways, so back to these plants that we were talking about. Well, what is it about these plants that attract all these pollinators? Well, it's pollen.
Yes, pollen.
The flowers. So the pretty things that you have to look at will pollinators love them even more. So what are some of these pollinators, Chancey, like that actually the insects and birds that do this pollinating?
Yeah, so the main pollinators that I think we're concerned with are butterflies, bees, hummingbirds. Those are ones that, we're trying to attract to our properties for various reasons. But to get back to the plants of it and what I call like the pollination biology of it, plants don't make pretty flowers for us to enjoy and pick. They make pretty flowers to attract pollinators. They are trying to attract pollinators so that the pollinator can come in there and allow the plant to reproduce. So that's why they make the pretty smells and the pretty flowers. And most of these different plants are created in such a way so that they attract specific pollinators. Not that pollinators can't overlap, and pollinate species across, but some plants are specifically kind of designed for pollination by, say, hummingbirds. Some plants are specifically designed for, say, pollination by butterflies, and some for, like, bees.
So these plants are putting these flowers on to attract these different pollinators, kind of like me and Chancey used to do back in our single days. When we get all dressed up with our starch pants on and brush our hair, go to dancing
put
and
on
all.
a pretty shirt.
Man, I mean, tell you, buddy, maybe a squirt or two of cologne.
Yeah, well, there you go.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, you were trying to attract pollinators, I guess.
Something like that.
Yeah, but that it really is. That's what the flower is doing. I mean, that's what the plant is doing. It uses that as a means for reproduction. When you think about specific stuff, let's just go with hummingbirds, for example. Most people, or hummingbirds, really are fond, and these animals see differently.
Well, and it's kind of like you said, we are with antlers. Like, people are that way with hummingbirds, too.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to attract hummingbirds. Like, they're just fun to watch.
They're amazing.
Oh, man.
They're unbelievably mind-blowing to watch one fly. Watch one just do its thing. And to see one,
And I forget how many calories it takes them to move their wings as fast as they do. Like how much sugar they have to consume in order.
Yeah,
it's an unbelievable amount of calories that it takes for them to move.
That's why they need nectar and stuff like that. They need super rich, super fast, and they're on a high sugar diet, But they also eat protein. I mean, they eat bugs and stuff too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they'll eat bugs and stuff because they do need protein, and they don't get a whole lot of protein from the nectar. But if you think about the biology of the species, the biology of a hummingbird, how many times have you ever watched a hummingbird go feed and land and then feed?
I don't think I've ever seen one land.
I haven't either. They always hover.
Because they even have the little rail around the hummingbird feeders for them to land on, and they never do.
Yeah, sometimes they'll land on it, but a lot of times they're, are hovering there. Animals see differently than we do. Some of them can see very similar to the way we do, but some of them see, like insects and stuff, they may see at the different wavelengths and ultraviolet light, but they have colors that they key in on, that they like particularly, and hummingbirds really like reds and oranges and yellows and combinations of those flowers. So if you think flowers that attract hummingbirds, these are flowers that are generally reds or oranges or yellows or a combination, and they're usually held away from a plant. They're held away from a plant so that a hummingbird could fly up to it, be able to stick its beak in there and get nectar from it without having to land on something. So think of like your coral honeysuckle. And also most hummingbird plants, the flowers are tubular, like a tubular flower. So think of coral honeysuckle or cardinal flower, little, they're on a stalk, or even standing cypress, which is a plant that I love, Hummingbirds can go up there and pollinate. They can go and hover and get the nectar without having to land.
Do you know if most of these are annuals?
A lot of them are perennial. Like
Most of them?
Yeah, a lot of them are perennial. Especially so, like your woody plants have like there's a specific shrub that's called hummingbird bush, and it's just an amazing. It grows in the tropics and even into South Texas. It's a perennial bush, and man, it's got the flowers like that. It's got the perfect colors like that,
And it will attract them, huh?
Oh man, it'll attract you. Start planting. It's just like this. How many of y'all, and I know it's happened to me, and you probably don't know, have problems with hummingbirds getting into your garage in the spring? You're out there in the springtime, you're working in the garden, you're working in the yard, you're using the lawnmower, and hummingbird gets in your garage. Has that ever happened to you? It's happened to me several times.
We don't have that many hummingbirds where I live out in the farming area.
Mm-hmm.
There's just not enough stuff out there for them to eat. Now, you could attract a few of them with a hummingbird feeder, but
sure.
we don't have a garage either, Chancey.
Well, if you did, most of the time.
Yeah, that's the other problem. That's the main reason we've never got any hummingbirds in our garage.
Well, if you did and you had a garage door open, there's a very high chance that the string that hangs down on the handle is red.
It is.
A very high chance if you have one. If you got that
Thinking back to my mom and dad's house growing up, it was.
It hangs down and it's red. And those hummingbirds go in those garages because they see that little red and think about it's dark. That little red is just looking like a beacon, like a beautiful, magnificent flower sitting there ready to be pollinated.
Well, isn't that something?
So all you gotta do is take some black spray paint the handle,
and that'll keep the hummingbirds.
I'm not saying they can't get in there, but they're not going to be attracted to there. I've even seen hummingbirds key in on like lighter fluid, tops of lighter fluid, the red top.
Wow.
They'll key and go check it out. Try to pollinate it.
Wow.
So red, they're going after those colors. So
well, if you think about it, hummingbird feeders are mostly red with yellow flowers too.
Yes, that's because of that. That's the colors. So specific plants like that, like I said, that hummingbird bush, super important, and we'll talk more about specific plant when we get to there, but let's go ahead and move off hummingbirds and then talk about a butterfly adapted plant, or a plant that's kind of been designed or something to be pollinated by butterflies.
So for our hummingbirds, they red, yellow, orange colors, deep flower.
Yeah, tubular flower that extends away from the plant
that they could fly up to and pollinate without landing.
And we'll list a whole bunch of these here in a little bit.
Okay.
But then, say you wanted to attract butterflies to your place, and I'm not saying that butterflies can't pollinate what a hummingbird can, and vice versa. There's overlap there, but I am saying
these are the easiest ones.
These are the easy ones. So think about the biology of a butterfly. How many times do you see butterflies? Now, some swallowtails do it a lot, but a lot of times butterflies will land on a flower, and then they'll take their proboscis and they'll go around and jab it in, to get nectar. And so a lot of your butterfly adapted type plants have like an umbrella top, what you call a landing platform. Easy for a critter like a butterfly to land and be able to pollinate it. So think of like your lantanas. Think of your Dakota verbenas or verbenas or Dakota vervanes. Think of Indian paintbrush, or not Indian paintbrush, Indian blanket. All of your Gaillardia species, red firewheel, all those. They have that round, open, flat spot for a butterfly. I mean, if you want to see some swallowtails, just go out to an Indian blanket field and you'll see some soon. And then a lot of those other, like lantanas and Dakota verbena, they have like a little tiny hole inside each individual flower, and that hummingbird will take its proboscis and stick it down in there. So next time you look at a lantana flower, even though it's the size of a silver dollar or a 50-cent piece, that's hundreds of little flowers. It's not just one big flower, it's a bunch of teeny tiny little flowers.
Man, that's like all you could eat buffet for a butterfly if he gets on top of that thing. Yeah, you got all kinds of little stuff to pollinate there.
And I'm sure they see different colors too, but there's purple lantanas and pink ones, and there's orange and yellow ones, the one that's a little more native to here. And butterflies all attracted to all of them. But
color's not that important for a butterfly?
I'm sure that it is. I don't know for the exact of a thing, but I know bees and hummingbirds for sure, and I'm sure it is for butterflies. But like I said, gay feathers are a beautiful, beautiful plant out there that I just love, and I've seen butterflies hover and pollinate it, but I've also seen them land on it too, and just dig through it as well. So, I'm sure color matters sometimes, but they pollinate. And that's another thing about butterflies too. They have host-specific plants. They're larvae. So the perfect example is the monarch butterfly. the monarch. I mean, it's
What time of the year do they come through here?
they migrate in the fall and the spring. So, if you've never done or watched a documentary about monarch migration from Canada across the Great Lakes through the plains, through Texas and into Mexico where they winter, I highly recommend you document it. That is a mind-blowing migration. And to think that an insect does it is absolutely one of the most remarkable, amazing, awesome things in nature, in my opinion. And so they come right through Texas. In the fall, they usually come through the hill country. Like I remember sitting on the mountains of Bandera, Texas, when I was an intern, trying to shoot does, and it'd be October, and all afternoon long, I'd watch hundreds of monarchs just come through nonstop. It was just so awesome to watch.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. And then in the springtime, they're coming back, and then they're having to lay their eggs on the milkweeds, and then that's how they carry on their migration up north and then back. So that's a whole nother topic in itself, but it's fascinating. But they're specific. So these larvae for a lot of these butterflies have specific plants that the animal is totally 100% dependent on.
Kind of like the milkweed for the monarch.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Like I actually think there's a buddy of mine, his wife took a picture of it. It's called a Gaillardia moth. And he's got a picture of a little tiny moth. It's about a half-inch long, and it was perfectly red and yellow, just like the Indian blanket, which is so cool. I wish I had that picture to show you. It's really, really neat. So that's kind of a butterfly plant. And then bees are a whole nother critter. Bees can pollinate just about anything they want to. They are designed so awesome to do that. And while we're on the topic of bees right quick, I want to mention briefly about just some bee stuff right quick. For example, most people think of honeybees, but in reality, according to University of Texas, there's 4,000 native bees that are in North America.
4,000
native bees, 800. Now this is according, I guess, entomologists, like we said. Those guys are amazing. You think it's hard to key out a plant or be a plant taxonomist? Those insect guys, they know their stuff.
Buddy, I did a bug collection one time when I was little for an entomology project that we had through 4-H, and there's a lot to that.
Yeah. So
just classifying in one little insect.
Oh, yeah. So if you're into insects or plants or soils, you've heard the term lumpers and splitters before. So depending on if the entomologist was a lumper or a splitter, I guess, they say there's as many as 800,000 to 1 million 800 to 1,000 native bee species in Texas.
Oh, my gosh.
800 to 1,000, depending on who he is. 800, of native bees. So most of our bees out there are native little bees that some are small. There's
so this could be like from the bumblebee to
there's 9 different species of bumblebees in Texas, depending on who you talk to.
Oh, wow.
9 different species in Texas. And most of these bees are solitary. Most of our bees that pollinate our flowers are solitary. They're just solitary little bees with their own little life cycle. And so, like I said, you could just the bee migrate or bee biology, and I don't know a whole lot about it, but what little bit I read, it's just as amazing as the monarch migration. Some of this bee stuff and the species and how they pollinate, but they can see a lot of different colors, and they pollinate, have a wide range of plants and different kinds of plants that they can pollinate just because of the biology of the species. They can land on anything. They're pretty good flyers. They can hover as well. And then they also have these interesting little front feet. Their front feet are really cool for opening stuff up and getting into flowers. So a lot of the flowers that they bloom, like, for example, bluebonnets is a perfect bee plant. And if you've ever paid attention to bluebonnets when they're blooming and watch a bee approach a flower, specifically a bluebonnet, they always start at the bottom. And like a lot of your legumes and a lot of your salvias and sages have what they call bilateral flowers. That means they're not perfectly radially symmetric. They're kind of, they're like your mints and stuff.
Yes.
They have what's called a landing platform for a little bug or a pollinator to land on. And when he lands on it, it opens that plant up and exposes the pollen, and the pollen gets onto the bee, and then the bee takes it to the next plant. And when he does it, that's how pollination works.
Isn't that something?
Those plants have like nectar guides. If you look real close at some of your salvias, like bee pollinated plants, a lot of them are blues and purples. And like my wife's always cussing the bees, but she's a Rockdale Tiger, so she's always wearing a Rockdale Tiger t-shirt, and it's always blue. And
right?
Guess what? Bees always come check her out. It's like, take your blue shirt off, babe.
That's it. That's their color, huh?
Yeah, so they come check blues and
Like
purples.
a blue bonnet.
Yeah, and so if you ever notice, you ever pay attention to the little white spot in the middle of a bluebonnet flower? So a bluebonnet's pretty big, but a bluebonnet's composed of a bunch of little tiny flowers.
Sure it is.
When that bee comes to it, he always approaches from the bottom, and they start working a flower from the bottom and work their way up. So as, about halfway through the bloom season, you can look at those bluebonnets, and that little white spot in the middle has turned to red. Turned to red because once it gets pollinated, that little white spot turns red because the bee, not every species, some species can, but a lot of bees don't see red real well. It's not that they can't see red, it's just it doesn't pop to them. They're not attracted to it. They're attracted to those blues and whites and those contrasts and purples and stuff. And so when it gets pollinated, that little center turns red. And then the bee doesn't even...
They don't waste their time with it anymore.
Don't waste their time with it because it doesn't look good to them.
Man, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, so next time this bluebonnet season, if it rains good enough, we have a good one. Hopefully we do. Pay attention to those little bees. And so that bluebonnet flower is bee specifically pollinated because it's closed. And when that bee lands on that little landing platform of the bluebonnet flower, it opens up. And he uses his front legs and sticks them inside that little white spot. That's a little hole. He sticks them inside there, and then he can reach in there and pollinate that plant.
Well, isn't that something?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even think about something like that.
It's quite the system.
That is, boy, I tell you what, it's almost like it was designed to be that way.
Yeah, it's quite the system.
But Indian paintbrushes, on the other hand, Indian blankets are not the same.
Well, no, but bees can pollinate them. I've seen bees getting all into Indian.
The flowers are
paintbrushes.
different, though?
Yeah, the flowers are different. They don't open up. Indian blanket is a aster species. And when I say aster, these are your sunflowers, y'all. So think of your sunflower-type flowers. Daisies, asters.
Well, which one is it, Chancey, that has it looks just like a blue bonnet, but it's red? Is that the Indian blanket or Indian paintbrush?
That's Indian paintbrush.
Paintbrush,
yeah.
that one.
And if I was saying sometimes, y'all, excuse me, I use the words interchangeably, but I use them mistakenly. When I say Indian blanket, I'm talking about the little flat ones. The other ones, the genus Gaillardia. The other one is Indian paintbrush. It's genus Castiella. So that's what I mean. But it's kind of a bee-pollinated plant as well.
It's similar. It's got a very similar growing pattern to it.
Yes, it really is. But the flowers are much different if you pay attention.
And
to
it's
them.
red.
Yeah, it's red. So but bees can still, like I said, a lot of our native bees, they're jack of all specialists. And thank God we got them because they can pollinate just about everything because of the biology of the species. But there's some plants that are specifically for, or, kind of designed to, not maybe specifically for, but designed to kind of be a hummingbird plant or a butterfly plant.
Well, while you're on the topic, there was a gentleman come in here a couple of years ago. He had a peach tree in his yard, and he brought in these little mini-looking peach things that, they look like a really, really small little peach. And he brought them in, and he's like, all my peaches are falling off the trees. He said, it just was the size of probably like a peanut or something, I'd say, or so. And so I did some research on that, and I guess as it turns out, those peach trees have to be pollinated by bees, right?
It's a bee-type flower. Like if you think of a peach flower, it's got the landing platform and it's big, so that's probably a bee can crawl right in there. So a lot of your bee-type flower, I would say peaches get pollinated by bees, definitely.
And so is what I come to find out about after talking to people about this was that
all of your rose family, actually.
Well, if you think about a peach tree in town, is there many bees in town, or does people get a beehive in their house and you call somebody to come get rid of it? Like bees, there's not a whole lot of bees probably to be found within city limits.
Probably not, especially our native bees.
And so come to find out, that's what was wrong with his peach tree here in town. There was not enough bees in town to pollinate it and so these little things that look like peaches were actually just the flower that never got pollinated and just fell off.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly right. So that's why there's bee people that move their hives, from places to places to help, like I said, the rose family, like almonds are in the rose family. Like they'll have some of those almond farmers take bees, or they have bees, but
cotton.
Yeah, cotton. They'll move them, and that's honeybee stuff. But when you think about that, there's say 1,000 species of native bees in Texas. Well, what were those native bees used to pollinating?
And then there's that
native wildflowers.
Yes.
Native. That's what. And so what? How much native wildflowers do we have out there? That's growing out in the range, and that's out there that isn't put into
Pretty much road ditches.
Yeah, yeah.
And if it's not in a road ditch, you don't see them, too many other places.
Yeah, so a lot of our native, that's part of our wildlife management project, we'll leave standing stuff, try to, pollination is about as critical as it gets from a biological process as far as human beings, Pretty much no pollination is about as critical as water. So need to definitely make sure that our bees are taken care of.
Hard times are ahead if we run out of pollinators.
Yes. Yes, it would. We'll become meat eaters real fast for a little time until the meat eaters get hungry because they don't have any plants to eat.
And then there's that problem.
Yeah. No, so it's a pollination biology in itself is just a fascinating topic that, if you're interested in, I highly, get some books on or something because it's really neat, especially learn about bees, and every bee species has a different kind of hierarchy, and it's just amazing to.
Everything has a niche.
Their life cycles. Yeah, their life cycles. So, and there's plants that they're adapted to pollinate, specific ones.
For bees?
Yeah, well, bees are kind of across the board, but a lot of your bee type stuff, like bee plants, you want bring some bees, whether bumblebees or native bees, blues and purples. Think so, blues and purples. So your sages and your salvias, like there's some sages that are red, and they'll help with bees will pollinate them too. But your red ones like our autumn sage, hummingbirds will pollinate that as well. But I gotta say this about my mom. A couple of years ago, she found some kind of sage that she had cultivated or something, and it just grew like a weed. And this was a beautiful sage. I don't know exactly what species it was. It might have been called indigo spiral salvia or Russian sage. I don't know which species it was. But I was just kind of going by the pictures, but she had bumblebees on that plant all summer long, and not just one or two. I'm talking hundreds of them, and they stayed. That thing, she didn't water it, she took care of it a little bit. That thing bloomed every day for all summer long. I was like, this is the most incredible bumblebee bush I've ever seen in my life, and it made the most beautiful purple sage flower. It looked like mealy sage, y'all, except it was a deeper, rich, more beautiful purple flower, and it bloomed year-round. I mean, not year-round, but it bloomed all summer long, and it fed those bees nonstop. And not just bumblebees, but also carpenter bees were there and other things too. So
now, those bumblebees are pretty aggressive, aren't they?
Well, they can be, yeah.
And they live in the ground mostly?
Yeah, from what I know, that a lot of times they'll live in the ground or in something. Like I said, that's a whole nother thing, the bumblebee.
I picked up a roll of hay one time that had been sitting over the winter, and it had a bumblebee nest underneath it, and I had they attacked every inch of that tractor that we were using to move that hay with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, them suckers.
I've heard, and I've heard bumblebees get after. I've never got into them, thank goodly, but I know like regular, the killer bees for sure. They've moved into Texas, something to be worried about. And even ground hornets, ground hornets can be bad too. They're bad news. So I guess if you got bumblebees, you might have a hive somewhere. But the thing about bumblebees is only the queen survives. All the other worker bees, as far as I know, and that's every species of bumblebee. And most of our bumblebees, I might add, or most of them I think are SGCN species. And I think they're thinking about putting the American bumblebee, if they haven't already, on the threatened species list. Maybe even the endangered. I don't know. I have to fact check that. But
is that
I know
right?
I've heard some talk about the American bumblebee. But definitely, I'm sure if there's a hive in your yard, you definitely want to respect it, or maybe you don't need it there if it could be a problem, or if you're allergic to bees or something.
Do you know how that works? Like a female bee that's born in a bee colony, like what happens to it? Like, since you only have one queen, like, does it become a worker? Does it not?
That's a topic, y'all, that I think that's very, very well studied, and there's lots of books and articles about that. I don't know all the details on it. I think for every species it's different, but
how they
choose. I understand, because only the queen survives. For bumblebees.
Like year to year?
Yeah, I think every worker in bumblebees die.
Over the winter?
Like in the very first part of the spring, the very first, when things first start blooming.
Right now.
Yeah, the very first bumblebees you see, and like I said, I'm not an entomologist. So from what I remember, I want to say that those are all queens. They're just the queen that is out there trying to get enough nectar, get enough energy stuff to start laying her eggs and start her colony.
Wow.
But as the summer progresses, you get more and more workers. That's what I think. Hopefully an entomologist or from A&M or something will go. But it's something that if you're interested in, y'all Google search it. Get on Texas A&M AgriLife Extension and read about bee life cycle and their social orders, it'll blow your mind.
They really are fascinating.
Yeah, it'll blow your mind. But I guess back to some of the flowers that they love that you could be landscaping in your yard would be bluebonnets, of course. Fall aster, Abelia grandiflora, which I don't know the common name of it, but it's Abelia is what I've usually heard and seen it, which is kind of a shrub. But it's got a flower real similar to a peach. So, bees just love it. Agarita, which is a good one, for bees. All your asters, sages, autumn, both the autumn one and the purple, good for bees. Daisies, all your sunflowers, and horse mints, too. Those are all good bee-type stuff. And a lot of them you could landscape in your yard or around a water feature, around a bird bath or something like that, and you'd attract a lot
My
of
grandma,
bees.
she would always plant just the wild sunflowers in her yard, and boy, it attracted all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, they're pretty flowers.
They are.
They really are. Let's see. So that's kind of some stuff you could plant for bees. If we wanted to get specific, like we started off with hummingbird plants, so plants that you could plant in your yard or landscape around your house or property to attract these animals, these hummingbirds, some specific ones are, like I said, that hummingbird bush. Coral honeysuckle. That is a good one, y'all.
That's a big, deep flower on a honeysuckle.
Yeah, and so you got Japanese honeysuckle, and then you got coral honeysuckle, which is a pretty red one that's got a yellow center, and it's a tubular flower. It's a vine, y'all. So think of where you could, where a vine would do good, and this is a hardy plant too. Once you get established, you'll really like it, and you'll attract hummingbirds with it, I guarantee you. Flame acanthus. Flame acanthus is a good one. It's got a tubular long flower, and this is a tough plant, y'all. Like, it loves full sun, and it can take the heat. So if you got a hot spot on the west side of the house, if you can't get nothing to grow and it's just constantly burned up, plant a flame acanthus there, and it'll
tough.
It's tough, and hummingbirds love it. Cardinal flower, I said autumn sage, standing cypress, which is if you're in, kind of a sandier land or even a gravelier land here in Central Texas, standing cypress. That's a beautiful plant that hummingbirds will go out.
Almost like a cypress tree.
It's actually, they call it standing cypress, but it's actually an herb, but it'll get, when it blooms, it puts up a long stalk that's got a bunch of different little red flowers all up and down the stalk. You see it on Grasshopper Hill, Bradley, in the springtime. If you ever been driving when we was in kids, on that place you used to lease.
Yeah.
Once you cross the creek and go up the hill, it grows there in the spring. It's that pretty flower you'll see. It gets a real pretty red stalk. And then if you get out in the sandy land, you'll see it at wells too, in some of our deeper sands.
It likes well-drained soils.
Yeah, well-drained soils. Mm-hmm. Turk's cap, which is a good one that grows in the bottomlands, that's a good humming. I think most of these are red flowers, y'all, so these are hummingbird plants. Lantanas, they'll use them as well, especially when you get some that have the reds and oranges. They'll attract hummingbirds as well, but it's also a butterfly plant. Trumpet vine, that's a good one. And shoot, all your salvias, any of your salvias that are red or orange or yellow, salvias, sages. I think there's 900 different species different species in the genus salvia. So, bunch of sages and stuff out there you could be planting. Think of colors and tubular. You find a plant that's tubular, holds away from the plant.
Good hummingbird plant.
And it's orange or yellow or a combination. Tacoma stands, what we call esperanzas, yellow flower, drought hardy. It's a little bush. That's a good one to plant. Real pretty yellow flower. Did we mention we talked about bee pollinated? But I wanted to say, just because I think it's pretty cool, the fly stuff. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
So there's some plants, y'all, that are specifically pollinated by flies. And I don't have any, but I've read, that they smell like rotten flesh. Yeah.
You wouldn't want to grow those on your front porch, probably. But, boy, wouldn't that be something to see, though?
Yeah, fly adaptive power. So they give off an aroma, That
they have an odor that basically
like carrion.
Yeah,
carrion. And then some flowers are specifically kind of beetle pollinated flowers.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Like a lot of your cactuses. Like I do a lot of black lace cactus surveys in the springtime, which is an endangered plant down in South Texas, and when they're blooming, almost all of its pollinators are beetles or beetle larvae. I've got tons of different kinds. I don't even know. Like I said, got to be a bug nerd, but bunch of different kinds of beetles. And so next time when your cactus prickly pear is blooming, go in there and look inside of it. A lot of times it's a beetle. And they like spices. If you smell like a prickly pear or a cactus type flower, a lot of times it's spicy smelling, kind of a spicy smell. And I guess the beetles like that.
So, I wonder if that smell or that carries over to the honey that people make. You know,
I think so. It's
specific.
specific.
There's different, like you have
Sure.
prickly pear. Don't we have prickly pear honey? I think some people.
Yeah, just about anything that's pollinated.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, I wonder if
clover.
that carries over to the honey, like the taste of the honey.
Like yes, it does. I know specifically, like working in South Texas all the time, you know, the spring brush down there blooms. So like all the weesatch and the twisted acacia and the ratama and the kidney wood and agarita, all this spring diversity brush blooms down there. And a lot of those bee farmers will put their hives in South Texas on diverse places, and it makes some of the best honey there is. Just native brush honey. Yeah,
you get a real mix of a lot of different things.
Yeah, and like I said, you know, I don't know a whole lot about producing honey, but you know, you can get different honey from clovers or whatever, and they all have a different taste to them.
Yeah, we sell several different ones here at the store, and people will come in and ask for them. You know, buy a species. They'll be like, "Do you have cotton honey?" You know.
Yeah.
And so
I've heard cotton honey is really good. I've never tried that one before.
It's probably good unless they got in there after it was sprayed with Roundup. But
yeah,
that's the only thought I've ever had about cotton honey. You know, I mean, Roundup Ready cotton. You know, you've probably sprayed it. You know, with Roundup. Maybe depending on when, and I'm wondering if that carries over to the honey possibly. But
so I don't know, but and you know, I mean, here in our neck of woods, we've got Mexican plums, you know, and that's getting pollinated, and even thicket plums, you know, it's getting pollinated, and red buds, they're getting pollinated by bees mostly. So,
yes, that's true.
So they're all fixing to bloom right now. So think about it. Here comes spring. Our native bees, like I said, a lot of them are solitary, and if they're not solitary, like the 9 bumblebee species, those queens are fixing to start coming out and trying to get some.
And they're hungry.
Yeah, hungry. So that's kind of cool little tidbit that I thought about the flies and the beetles.
Well, you know, speaking of that, I wonder what the deal is with the Venus flytrap. Like, you know, what the deal is with that. Is that a pollinating thing, or what is that?
No, it's because most of your fly traps and stuff like that grow in acidic, boggy type soils.
Okay.
So they're getting the plants needing nitrogen.
That's like basically like we fertilize plants. They get that from eating the insects.
Yes, yeah.
Well, how about that?
Yeah, so and that's what I understand. So like the Venus flytrap, and there's some that probably is pollinated too. It might be a combination, but I know a lot of them need nitrogen, so they get their nitrogen from the bugs that they trap, or like say a pitcher plant. Pitcher plants, you know, the bugs fall down in there. That's where they can get some of their nitrogen from. And same thing with your what do they call it, honeydew, which we have these here, or not honeydew.
You know, you'd almost have to have a digestive system in order to take advantage of that. It's kind of weird to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, really and truly.
Well, yeah, think of those pitcher plant bogs, you know, out in East Texas and stuff. And in Louisiana, I've worked a lot with those as well. And it's just neat, you know, the bugs fall in there. And from what I understand, I don't know, don't quote me. I mean, I may be wrong, but I think they're using it as a nitrogen source. I believe so. I'll check on that, y'all, and mention it next week if they aren't. I guess, did we cover butterfly plant stuff?
No, I don't think we did.
Butterflies in your yard?
Well, I think we covered the bees and we covered the hummingbirds, but I don't believe we covered the butterflies yet.
Okay, so some butterfly plant specific, and like I said, y'all, most of these I'm trying to do native. I know some of them may not be native, but, you know, as long as it's not an exotic invasive species that's going to get out there, you know, it's okay to landscape, you know, in your yard. Like, what was I going to say? Pride of Barbados. I think that's an awesome hummingbird plant too, and it's a kind of a brushy tree. Pride of Barbados, that's a humming plant too. That's good. But butterfly specific, Dakota verbenas, like we mentioned, purple. You know, they think of your flowers that have, or shrubs that have like a place for a butterfly to land real well. Lantana, like I said, all your gaillardias. Of course, your milkweed for your monarchs, if you want to kind of help out your monarchs. And there's a bunch of different species of milkweed. I mean, just in Central Texas, you've got butterfly weed, you got antelope horns, you got green milkweed, you got zyzotes. You know, you got several different species you could choose from just for Central Texas. Echinaceas, purple coneflower, that's a great butterfly plant. All your mist flowers, your white mist flower, your blue mist flower, those all do great. Gay feathers, beautiful plant that grows, that will do very well in our area. It's awesome for butterflies. Golden eye daisy, A nice shrub that's good for butterflies is Texas kidneywood. And we'll talk about this in just a second, but beware. If you got a deer problem, don't even think about planting Texas kidneywood because the deer will hammer it. It's even in the wild, it's a first choice plant. And so if you live in a neighborhood that's got a bunch of deer, they're going to eat it. Horse mint, Turk's cap, all your phloxes. Like here we're fixing it, especially in the sandy land, we're going to get, if it rains, we're going to get some good phlox color. These are like your little Drummond's phloxes or golden eye phloxes. Your little native phloxes out there that kind of have several flowers. These are really good butterfly. And like a lot of stuff, you can landscape with these and attract those animals. That kind of covers, and like I said, y'all, this is not a comprehensive list. This is just a list of stuff out there you could be thinking of, kind of native. And most of this stuff you can find at your local nursery, especially a native nursery.
Well, even like your native, like wildflower mix of seeds that's so easy to plant.
Yeah, has a lot of these in there. And I think, y'all, you can go and even find bee-friendly mixes and butterfly-friendly mixes of native wildflowers to plant on your property, and it involves just raking up a little small spot in your yard. It doesn't even have to be very big. Just rake up a little spot and plant it just like we talked about earlier with the broadcast method.
And a lot of those things, they're being as though they're going to make a flower, they're going to make a seed, and then they'll come back again next year.
A lot of
those
are annuals. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You shred it, mow it down, and
make sure that you wait for it to go to seed first. That's where the highway department messes up a lot. They're trying, and people in general, they're trying to
wait for the wildflowers to seed.
Yeah, wait for your bluebonnets to start popping. When they start popping, that's when you want to shred them. But if you shred them before that pod is matured, then you just took your seed source out for that year. Shred it or mow it.
Even though you let it go to the bean the pod that it made.
Yeah, but if it doesn't mature yet.
You wasted your time of even letting it get that far at that point.
Yeah. So the bluebonnet's got to bloom.
It takes a pretty good amount of time for that to happen.
Usually we shred before it's done, before the seed has started popping yet.
Yes.
When I call it become mature. So what I'm talking about is with that pod, a bluebonnet is a legume, so that makes a little bean pod.
It's a really big seed.
Yes, and it pops. And when it gets brown and pops open, that's you need to let it wait till then before you mow it or shred it, even in your yard, if you want to let it reseed so they'll come back again next year.
Will deer eat those?
Bluebonnets?
The beans? The little pods that they make?
I've never seen them eat it, but it wouldn't surprise
me.
Deer will eat just about anything if they get hungry enough.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me at all. I'm sure they're not picking it up off the ground, once it pops like a quail would, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise them if they eat the pod for sure on the plant.
What about deer-resistant plants?
Yeah.
What are some things we could plant in our yard because if the deer in neighborhoods and everywhere are starting to become a problem, they're even becoming like a issue out where I live too. So what are some things that you could plant that like these deer just absolutely will not touch?
Yes. Well, if they get hungry enough, they'll eat just about anything. But there's definitely some plants that you could plant, like if the deer are, because what I mentioned, y'all, over here on butterfly plants and bee plants and hummingbirds, a lot of those deer like to eat. They're yummy for them.
A lot of them you mentioned there are good little forbs when they're small.
Yeah. So, I mean, and a lot of them, the brush, the deer will target them specifically. But there's some plants out there that deer just generally don't like to eat. Unless they have to. And that's what we talked about in one of our earlier episodes, the third choice plants. And some of these, and these are going to be a mixture of woody plants, shrubs, a little bit of everything, y'all. But things just you can think about planting that are what I'm going to call deer resistant are cedars. Any of your junipers, they don't eat them though. They've got to be hungry to eat. Wax myrtle, yeah.
Them cedars will make you sneeze a little bit too, though.
Hey, you got to listen with that this year.
Yeah, tell you, yeah. Did we discuss that?
No, I don't think we did.
It's the weirdest thing about cedar trees. While we're on the topic, but I didn't know that there's a male and a female cedar tree.
Yes,
like two different ones.
Yep.
Not self-pollinating, and so the female cedar trees apparently, as Chancey was describing it to me, make the little purple berries, I guess you would call it.
The fruit.
The fruit.
Yeah, so that was a flower that got pollinated.
Mm-hmm. Make little yellow flowers. Like they're real little flowers, aren't they, that it usually puts on?
Well, they're tiny, because it's in its own kind of a strategy of plants. I don't think it's a flowering plant. It's in its kind of own.
You just see a little color change there when it puts it on,
and then especially the males when it's producing pollen.
Oh Lord! And so if you noticed the cedar trees here recently, you really probably noticed the male ones.
Yes.
Yeah, Chancey sent me a little video a couple weeks ago of a male cedar tree outside of his house, and I mean, it is just like he took a stick and hit it, and just a cloud of pollen just comes off of this cedar tree. I mean, they are covered in pollen.
Covered in them. And so you brush them, or if you have one in your yard, y'all, and you're allergic to cedar, probably want to think about cutting it down.
Or you might, if you're going to plant one, you might try to figure out if it's a female version of it first.
Yes, and that's especially true for like a lot of what we mentioned, planting stuff. If you were planting it from a fruit like persimmon, persimmon has male and female too. So make sure that you want to buy a female persimmon tree, but you're also going to need a male if it's only one, or you're not going to get pollinated.
And that may be a whole nother topic, because pecan trees appear to be the same way too, like as far as getting a good pollination, like you need several trees.
Oh yeah, you need several for everything.
Like we used to have 5 pecan trees in our yard, and we added onto our house, so we had to cut down 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, since we've removed those 3 trees, we're getting a lot less pecans on our other 2.
Yes.
Because of a pollination issue,
Diversity's key, like we talk about so much of it. Especially when it comes to pollination. So, like, just pollination biology, back to it. I mean, there's also wind-pollinated stuff, which is your cedar trees, and even your
that
elms. Pollen
will travel.
Yes, it can travel, so wind-blown. So, some are pollinated by animals, some pollinated by even bats, and I think there's some areas, that are even pollinated by other small mammals. But other deer-resistant plants, wax myrtle, if it did, most of your lantanas, deer ain't going to mess with. Mealy sage, they don't like mealy sage at all, which is a good sage type plant, good for bees. Wafer ash, which is a small little shrub. Ratama, deer don't normally eat ratama, and it's got a beautiful yellow flower, y'all, and it smells good. In South Texas, when that stuff is blooming, I love being in South Texas just because it smells so good, the ratama. Coralberry, it makes a real pretty fruit in the wintertime right now, and deer don't tend to eat it. Sycamores, Mexican buckeye. Mexican buckeye is also a good pollinator type plant to grow as well, and deer don't like it, and it'll attract critters. Anacacho orchid tree, which is a cool little legume. It's native to like the hill country and stuff like that. You'll see it around there. It's actually native to the Anacacho Mountains, which is, a whole nother topic in Texas, which is really cool little legume that's got a pretty flower.
And the deer don't like.
Yeah, that they don't like. A lot of legumes they hammer, but this happens to be one they don't tend to. And I'm not saying they won't eat it, but if there's too many, they tend to eat other things first. Texas persimmon is a good one. Deer typically don't hit it as hard, but I've seen areas of high deer density where they will eat it. Evergreen sumac. American beautyberry here. American beautyberry, I have that, and redbud with a star beside it, because that's an interesting plant. In some soil types, I see it, deer hammer, and some other ones, they won't touch it. So I don't know what it is about it, but some American beautyberries,
that's very
they'll
odd.
eat, and some of them they won't eat. I don't know what's going on. Same with redbuds. I've seen redbuds. Another thing, too, if you plant a redbud, y'all, in Texas, you got the eastern redbud and you got the Mexican redbud. Make sure if you're planting it the hill country, plant the hill country one. But if you're east of I-35, plant the eastern one.
That might have been what my mom and dad did wrong when we were kids. They planted one, and it didn't last very long in the black dirt out there.
Yeah, one of them's more adapted to the acidic eastern type soils, and one of them's more adapted to the out calcareous limestone blackland type soils where we're from.
I bet that's what we did wrong. Mm-hmm. And that cotton root rot, will it get those?
I don't know. I'm not sure about that, Bradley. Yeah, don't know. And like I said, and they're funny. Sometimes I see deer hammer them, and then sometimes they won't touch them. So it's one of those plants I just take a note of, like, that's interesting. Didn't read that one in the book. Carolina buckthorn, that's a beautiful little shrub that actually is native to the hill country and does well here as well. Deer tend to not eat it as well, but it's a cool little tree. Desert willow, Eve's necklace, which is really, it's in the same genus as, the beautiful shrub everybody plants that smells like purple Kool-Aid.
I don't know what that is, but I want to plant some
Mountain
now.
laurel.
Oh, okay,
when
yeah.
it blooms, man, it smells just like purple Kool-Aid. I used to, when I was planting in plant taxonomy, I'd collect that stuff every spring for labs and quizzes, but I'd always throw some underneath the seat of my truck because it'd make the truck
smelled
smell,
that good.
Oh, man, for like a month, and then, this stuff's stout, and it smells just like purple Kool-Aid to me. So Eve's necklace is a good one, and deer don't like Eve's necklace or mountain laurel. Agarita. Agarita's got a beautiful little yellow flower. It's fixing to pop right now. If you got any agarita on your place, go look at it. It's fixing to bloom if it's not blooming already. And then also some of those salvias. A lot of your salvias and sages. A lot of them deer just kind of tend to avoid.
So if you look at that list, there's a lot of crossover there with your pollinators.
Yes, and just try to work it together. If deer are an issue for you, because you don't want to go out there and spend money and time and then come back the next day and the deer have hammered it down.
Because that will happen.
Yes, it will, especially if you plant something they like. Some other things that they don't tend to eat real much is mock orange, oleander, black-eyed Susan, pride of Barbados, what we talked about, rock rose, cedar sage, tropical sage, Lindheimer senna, which is a pretty little yellow legumes, kind of native to the hill country. A lot of succulents, y'all. Deer don't tend to eat cactuses, a whole lot. I mean, in South Texas, I'll see them camp on them, but a lot of our landscape type cactuses and choyas and stuff, they don't eat them much. Nolinas and sacralistas, sotal, red yucca. Red yucca, red yucca is a beautiful, perfect hummingbird plant. It's a little succulent out there. It's very well.
I thought a yucca gets big.
Some of them do, but there's a little red yucca. They call it a yucca. I don't think it's a yucca. I think it's actually in the lily family, but they call it a yucca. But it's a little drought-tolerant little plant. It puts up a beautiful little stalk. It makes little red flowers on it. Hummingbirds love it. So if you want to xeriscape something, y'all, plant some red yuccas on your place. You don't have to water them very much. They're drought-hardy, and you will bring in the hummingbirds.
They probably like well-drained soils, though, don't they?
Yeah, I'm sure they do. Yeah, and a lot of the stuff that we're planting in likes well-drained soils. They like it moist, but they don't like their feet wet, or to stay wet. Twist leaf yucca, all your Buckley yuccas in East Texas and in Milam County, Louisiana yucca, these put up stalks with pretty flowers, and deer don't tend to eat them. Those are some good ones to think about from deer resistant, from a landscape standpoint. Vines that, you could look at is coral honeysuckle. That's a good hummingbird plant that deer tend not to eat too much. All your jasmines, your species gelsemium, passion flowers like the real pretty passion flowers that so many people like. We got a yellow passion flower and a purple passion flower. In general, they'll avoid them. And also like wisteria. I know wisteria is a kind of a no-no. It's, one that's kind of naturalized in area. But it's a good pollinator plant, and deer do not like it at all. So if you got an area that, if you like wisteria, that's an option. Whereas a lot of people don't like wisteria because it can naturalize and, kind of escape. So.
Yeah. But there is a place for it if you can control it.
Sure. And sometimes, you need it, something like that. You need it to cover something up. It serves its purpose for what it intends, and it makes a beautiful flower too. It really does.
So that's a list of plants that you could plant. If you got deer in your area that would do where these plants will actually survive without the deer eating them all up.
Yes.
And so I guess, Chancey, that about wraps it up for today, don't it, bud?
Yeah, I think so. And like I said, I know, y'all, that's a broad topic over a bunch of different stuff, but it's an interesting topic, and we're out there in the yards and gardens right now this time of year anyway. So if you're going to a nursery, and you want to be a little more wildlife friendly, that's some stuff you could think about.
Especially think about the colors. That's an easy one.
Yes.
Yeah, what colors again? Sum it up for us. Bees.
Bees really like purples and blues with contrasting whites, and lavender, stuff like that. Hummingbirds really like yellows and oranges and reds and combinations of those. The way that the flower is on the plant makes a big difference for hummingbirds. But bees they're specialists. Well, I say specialists, but they can pollinate just about anything they want, So they can do lots of colors, but they really like blues and purples and sage type colors. They seem to be attracted to them very, very well. Butterfly plants, think of the shape, stuff like that.
So do yourself a favor, and whenever you plant your flower beds this year, keep all that in mind, because that's a whole lot. There's a whole nother something else to look at that's almost as fun to look at as the flowers themselves.
Yeah, well, I tell you, if you make a butterfly garden around your house, or a specific, hummingbird, plant some native plants and landscape it around a water feature, around a bird bath with these plants, it'll blow your mind how many hummingbirds you'll bring in. It's cool, especially just bees. Like I said, that plant on my mom's, that salvia she's got, it was stunning to see how much it fed and how long it did and how many bees we're on it every day. Every day.
So keep that in mind as you go out shopping for your plants this year. And because it is springtime and it's time to get out there, it's time to start turning the dirt, time to get things in the ground and get them growing.
Yes, sir.
But, hey, guys, I guess that's it for this week. It was a joy talking to you. Chancey's always a pleasure visiting with you too, bud.
Likewise, Brad. Always fun to be here.
And I guess we'll talk to y'all next week.
Bye-bye, y'all.